Good evening. I'm going to end on that because I may not get any more applause, so we can stop. I have no idea what he said, okay? So let me just reiterate a couple of things. You can blog that you're at the meeting. You can blog that we've talked about the HoloLens. You can do that. The only restriction is photos of the device. And don't ask me why, but our marketing group has said, unless it's an authorized photo that they don't want it released. And I don't know, I guess because we pay them a bunch of money and they figure that's how they earn it. The other thing is I'm not going to pass it around because I don't trust all of you to give it back to me. The device I do have with me is a non-functioning device. We aren't taking any functioning devices out of the States yet. Those will pop here in the next several weeks. But it's configured, it weighs the same, it's got all the same guts, it just doesn't operate. So at the end, those that have an overwhelming desire to come up and touch it and see it, we'll do that, and I'll control that a little bit up here, okay? Obviously, I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. Hopefully I don't have a shy crowd here. People will ask questions, make comments. The questions I can answer, I will. If there's something I can't answer, I'll maybe make up an answer or tell you I don't know. I'll tell you, everyone in this room knows more about developing games than I do. So, let's don't get into coding questions and big details because you'll embarrass me. But what I thought I would like to, has everyone at least seen the HoloLens on the web, a video? They've got some sort of thing? So at least some of our marketing dollars are working. So we'll see how that works. What I thought I would do real quick up front is just kind of give a quick kind of baseline about what the device is, some of its functions and features that, frankly, we don't do a very good job of advertising, and unless you really dig deep and read a lot of information, it may not be apparent. Also, I realize that a lot of it may be very well known to you guys, and I may bore you and put some of you to sleep, but bear with me for a few minutes and we'll get through that piece. What I think is really interesting, and again, it's something we don't do a very good job of making sure people understand, is that the HoloLens device itself is a fully functional, wearable Windows 10 PC. So anything you can do on a Windows 10 laptop, you can do with this device. That means I can go totally disconnected, just like I can with a laptop, or I can connect to the internet and do all the things you would do on an internet. Why that's important? It means that any applications that are written to run on a Windows 10 platform will run natively on HoloLens. Okay, you don't have to do anything else to develop an application. What tends to happen and what you see on most of the videos that get released, we tend to go to the far end of the wow factor, the really upbeat where we develop, these special use case scenarios. But think about this. With this device, you'll be able to run, like I said, right out of the box, a flat app. So anything that currently runs, you'll be able to run and use without any other development capability. Now, if you're a developer, maybe that's not great news, but if you're trying to get into the hands of people as a company, that actually is pretty helpful. At the far end of that, let's call it the application, or we call them experiences, but frankly, they're just apps. But because we have some divas in our development group and they want to, and don't blog that because they'll get mad at me, but they want to make special names for things. You have the really special heavy-duty use cases, and if people want, some of you probably seen them on YouTube on the site, but I've got a few we can show as well. But there's a whole spectrum of development that you can do in the middle. You can take those flat apps, which are the current apps that exist, take what is a flat 2D app and turn it into a 3D model and a 3D application. And you can do that without having to have the full-up game development expertise to do that. Now, I know you guys have that full up, or most of you do, so that's not really as big an issue. But for a lot of use cases, and especially a lot of organizations who want to try and figure out how to get an immediate return on their investment of buying into this platform, the ability to use it quickly is important to them. Then they can go out and hire folks like you to go build out the more complex capabilities. So I think that's an important thing to understand about the platform. So the other thing is, the device, like I said, it is a head-worn device. totally wireless. There is no option for a wired connection on the device, okay? So it doesn't do any gas. It uses Wi-Fi and Bluetooth as the comms to be able to talk to it. We have no intention of building a wired device for anybody.
What about the battery?
The battery, very much like a laptop, it's going to depend on what you're doing on the device. So if I'm doing, Word documents and email and things like that, I'll get 5.5 hours out of it. If I'm doing highly intensive, the computational type things, the renderings and all that stuff, reality is probably going to get closer to 2.5 hours out of it.
Does it get warm?
No. It's a fanless cool, but when I pull it out, you see it. You don't actually, the part that's got the guts doesn't actually touch your head. But even after it's been run for hours, it's not getting warm. It's built to dissipate the heat, and there's been a lot of engineering work put into that as well.
Can you connect anything to it?
As long as it'll connect through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth.
All right.
You can connect anything to it as long as it's like the old joke in the States when they first came out with telephones. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. So it's kind of the same way on that when it's concerned. Yeah. All right. So we get asked a lot of this question, and this is the one we haven't kind of come out. But the reality is, you think about the field of view, think of about a 15-inch monitor about this far from your face. Okay? That's what it's going to be. And there's reasons for that. So let me tell you why it is that way. When you look at manufacturing the glass that's required to project these holograms to go through, if manufacturing that any larger becomes very difficult, and your failure rate goes up pretty high. And if your failure rate goes up high, that means the ones that make it through, the cost is going to go up significantly high. And so instead of making this, and you guys have seen this advertised, it's a $3,000 item for the development kit. Instead of it being $3,000, it's going to be $15,000 because you got to recover those costs. So, and the other thing is, if the more glass you've got and the more space you're projecting on, the battery consumption is exponential. We ran the numbers on that. And frankly, if you go from a 2.5 hour, let's say, high intense compute, if we did it more a full kind of face, you'd be down to about 20 minutes on the current battery capability, and nobody's going to want to do a device. So as the manufacturing process gets better and the power consumption and the circuitry and all that stuff, as it continues to improve, future versions, our intent is we'll try and increase the size of that.
Does it have a battery?
Yes, it has.
I mean a camera.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's got a number of sensors on it. So the way the system. Well, let me back up one step, because I know we're going to get to this in a point anyway. And let me talk about. Let's talk where HoloLens is intended to fall on the reality scale. Okay. So if you look at the reality scale, and I've got augmented reality on one end, and there's been some very good engineering hardware that's been built. And not here to disparage anybody competitive-wise or anything, but what augmented reality really does is it overlays information on the world that you're looking at. Okay, and it's not overly interactive. You can't do a lot with it, and in most of the circumstances for that to be deployed, you have to be tethered to some devices which are tethered to the cloud, so you don't have the ability to be truly independent and standalone capability. But again, certain use cases, certain applications, that's perfectly fine, and there's some good products out there. Let's take the other end of the spectrum, and let's talk about virtual reality, okay? And just because someone brought something else, I'm going to use Oculus Rift as the example, just to spite them. But if you think about the virtual reality, the intent there is to put you into completely immersive environment, right? Again, for certain applications and certain uses, ideal situation, you're going to want to do it, and you're going to want to go that route. But there are some limitations about the current systems that really do that well. And let's just take Oculus. The challenge with Oculus right now, again, and we partnered with them on some stuff, so they won't disagree with anything I say, is currently you have an umbilical cord that's tied back to equipment, so your mobility factor is very limited. The other thing under current configurations is you can't see your hands, your real hands, in that immersive environment. Now, they've got some ways and tools, and they'll get better. But right now, I can't interact in that immersive environment like I do the real world as intuitively as I can. The other thing a lot of people have issues with is with those devices is the motion sickness. You wear them for some period of time. Some people get really ill and have an ability. So when we decided that we wanted to go after HoloLens, we wanted to take a little bit different approach in the fact that what we wanted to do was we didn't want to just repeat the augmented reality, and we didn't want to try and compete with what the virtual reality does. We thought we had a different approach to fill in a little bit of a different niche, and that's why we use the term mixed reality. Okay, again, we got to pay the marketing and take advantage of this stuff. And if you're recording all this by voice, please take out all the disparaging remarks when I talk about marketing and all the other divas. So what we do with the HoloLens is the HoloLens is designed with the sensors on board, and that's where we'll get into some of the sensors you're talking about. Is the first sensor we'll talk about is the IR sensors that are in there. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Kinect device because you probably have one at home with your Xbox, right? So, or two. So good. All right, just nod yes and make me feel happy. It's the same technology that the Kinect is using, that the IR is using to do what we call a surface map of the room. And so it goes out and it builds a 3D model of the environment that you're in. Okay? And it identifies all of the fixed structures, tables, chairs that aren't moving, walls, ceilings, everything that's in there. And then what it allows you to do then is you can create holograms that you can place into that real world and interact with those holograms as if they were real objects. So if you've gone into a room and you scanned it and there's a table there, I can create a hologram. I can set it on that. I can give it physical properties. So if it's a bottle and I push it and it falls off, it'll fall to the floor. So it allows you, again, to use it. And because it's a mobile device, I can move around my environment now. I'm not tethered, and I can see what's out there. You can adjust the transparency of the holograms so that you can make them more transparent if there's a reason to do that, or you can make them more opaque if that's what you want to do. The other thing with that field of view, as I said, remember, it's not all-encompassing. It means I'm going to have a border all the way around, and I'm going to see my real world that I'm in all the way around that, which means I'm not going to have any of the motion sickness because my peripheral vision is never going to be compromised. Okay, so again, those are some of the advantages, the trade-offs that you make, and again, depends on what you're trying to do with your application, where in that spectrum you kind of want to fall. Yeah.
My name is John. I just wanted to ask, what's up with the cameras now? Which camera are you going to use now that you removed the Israeli camera from the HoloLens? You can hear a little about that.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I don't know who the manufacturer of the camera, the final. I don't know the name of that. But there's an RGB camera on board the device.
Yeah. Who manufactured the glass itself?
We manufactured it through, we're building this ourselves. So, it's all being built in the Far East. So I don't know the name of the company that probably a Taiwan company or someplace, but we're manufacturing the device. Well, remember, these are holograms, so they're created by light. So they don't have form. So, but the way they are created and you're put into your environment that you're in, it knows it's there, and that's why you can interact with it. But if you go up and it's a wall that you created, you push on it, your hand's going to go through the wall because it's a light that's there. But because it knows that there's an object there, if it's a door and you've given it the properties of a door, it'll open when you push.
One of the biggest problems is the latency. How is the latency in the prototype device? If there is a virtual model like this, it will take
He's talking about latency.
So the question is about latency. So far, all the experiences that we've built or all the applications we built, latency has not been an issue. Now, I am sure that you can come up with something. If you built, so let's back up a little bit else. Because this is basically a laptop you're wearing, you're going to have some limitations on the device. Okay, so in addition to storage and the processing capability, we have what we call a holographic processing unit, and that's what's creating the holograms. If you're rendering a very, very complex scene, with, I don't know, billions of points in the cloud, and you're trying to do that stuff, you're not going to be able to render all that on the device. It's just not going to be able to keep up. In that case, what you do is you would have a server that would be doing the heavy lifting, and it would push that rendered object on the scenes to you, and then you'd use a HoloLens for the display and the interaction piece. So you can get to a point to where you could conceivably overwhelm the device. The other place that you need a server is if I link 2 or more HoloLens together to share the same experience. Okay? So that's something else that's very unique about this device, is if I've created this experience, I can have multiple people share that experience at the same time. The other kicker is you don't have to be in the same location to do that. You can be halfway around the world as long as you got network connectivity, that bandwidth to be able to do that. And therefore, games. There's a lot of other enterprise.
Because of that.
I'm sorry?
And it's much heavier, the process is much...
Well, yeah, and so his question is the processing much heavier. It still would depend on what you're rendering. If I were rendering a very easy scene, but what you need the server for is the command and control to pass information between the 2 locations. So, because what it's going to do is, and let's say, we've done this location here, you're in, I don't know, you're in Norway. You like Norway? Maybe not this time of the year, but anyway, you're in Norway, and you're in a location. We've rendered this same scene in Norway. I'm standing here. Your perspective is different than my perspective because we're looking at each other. So what that server is going to do is pass all the data and do the command and control so that I know where you are, you know what I am, and I know what you're looking at, you know what I'm looking at. That's why you have to have that.
What will be the development platform for this device? Will it be XAML and HTML5?
So the question is, what's the development platform for this? Unity is the tool that's going to be used for the 3D modeling and the gaming drive. Git and Visual Studio are basically all you need. There is no secret sauce from a programming standpoint needed. It's all off the shelf type capabilities, and the big challenge is a lot of enterprises, as you guys know, don't have those skill sets from a development standpoint. So to be able to develop with the Unity, and especially in the gaming type, high-end type of experiences, they're going to have to go out and find those skill sets in communities like this. Okay. All right. So we got a couple more minutes. We can take questions, and I'm going to show some videos, and then we're going to mingle, I guess, and answer questions.
Can we see the device?
Yeah, I'll bring it out in just a second and show you. So, okay. Now wait a minute. I saw you earlier. Didn't you get all your questions asked? Can you recognize people? If you've got an application, a facial recognition type application or any other thing that's running, and it will run in Windows 10, then you can conceivably do that because you can do remember there's an RGB camera on board this. Well, yeah, but again, that's dependent on the application. Okay, the camera will register that, but it depends on the application, and as at least my experience is that those applications are very... They can be very unreliable in how they're done. Depends on the camera you're collecting, the lighting conditions, the angles, and all that stuff from either facial recognition or gait tracking or any of that other stuff. So real quick, the other sensors on board that are important to know about it does have an RGB camera, because the way you interact and control this device is through gestures. So in the videos, you've kind of seen what we call the air tap. Think about that as a mouse click. I've got one video I'm going to show you where we've taken that a step further that some of you may have seen, but it hadn't been out that long. You also do it through voice commands. Now, to the best of my knowledge, when it ships, it's only going to be working on English. So, but that will obviously change as time goes on. It also does what we call head tracking or gaze tracking. So as you turn your head, the cursor that's in there will move, because most people tend to turn their head at what they're looking at to do that piece of it. Remember, it does have Bluetooth, so you can connect any accessories such as a keyboard and mouse, or you could create a virtual keyboard and mouse that you could input as well to make that work. It has 3D audio in it. So it's got a couple of speakers on it, and where that's important in a gaming world, you're in the middle of a game and you want the sound to appear from behind you and to the right, it's going to sound to you like it's coming from behind you and to the right, or it's going to sound like it's coming in front of you and to the left. So no omnidirectional, just that sort of bit, okay? I didn't hear. Did someone hear?
Radiation to the head.
It's gone through all the same testing, at least in the U.S., that they go through for any other device. And there's a set of criteria for any wearables that you have, any broadcast systems, all that stuff. It's all in the U.S. It's got the Underwriter Lab approvals and the FCC approvals. I'm sorry?
It's the good radiation.
Yeah, it's good stuff for you. So it's passed all those criteria and measures. Okay, two more.
While experimenting with network applications, like two people connecting, have you encountered any bandwidth challenges, like passing?
So the question is, have we encountered any bandwidth challenges when we've networked people together? No, but we own the bandwidth we're using, so we can allocate it. So yeah, eventually, if you've got distressed comms paths, then you're going to suffer and you're going to get degraded support, just like you would on a video or anything else that's going to take place. But if you've got good bandwidth and good comms, you'll be fine. Last question.
Will it run crisis by itself?
Will it run, I'm sorry?
Like a big, demanding graphic game?
No, so that's what I was talking about earlier. If it's requiring more processing capability than that exists on the device itself, you have a server that you do the processing on, and it pushes the rendered imaging capability to the device.
It's a standard Intel. Like, I'm just wondering how hard can you push it by itself?
Yeah, I don't know specifically, what we're doing. I don't have the answer to that. But think of a typical laptop is what it's going to have. It's using the same guts. The difference is it has an added component, that holographic processing unit, and that's what creates the holograms and projects them out. Okay. All right. So I've been told I need to stop with the large group questions. I'm gonna pull the device out. I'm gonna show it to you because it is real, and then I'm gonna show you just a couple of videos. Some of you may have seen, but maybe others you haven't. And then I guess we'll do the mingling stuff. Is that okay? All right. Oh, we're timed out. Yeah. So